everyone, and welcome back to Coffee with the Captain. And as you can see, we have a bit of a different scene here at the ship. Miles, what have we been up to, and what are we up to?
Good morning, everyone, and to our guest, Kate, heading up the Star-Spangled Banner, this National Historic Heritage Trail. It's to be very confusing, but anyway, we're out here, and Kate joining us in the bay. We're north of the Bay Bridge. We're going past Gibson Island. We've come out of the Patapsco River behind the hard to see. That's North Point, where the British landed their Marines during the invasion attempt of Baltimore back in 1813. So we're on our way to Annapolis. We have very light air. The gale yesterday has blown out as forecast. Things are very sublime. We're going through the first experiences of this assembled 2021 sail up. So there's a lot of little fiddly details that we're sorting out as we get around and down towards Annapolis.
Yeah, can you kind of describe what the last week has been like for us in preparation of leaving our winter berth?
Sure. Well, you got a boat that's been emptied out for this winter layup. And that's a way of controlling weight gain. So we had to put a lot of it back. And that's in addition to the business of uprig. Because what we do for the layup is we do a lot of downrig. That gives us a chance to do work with rig as well. Emptying out the ship allows us to have access to the ship and to ventilate the ship. So this last 5 days, last 6 days has been getting into the weeds of the details. Okay, what paint do we want on board to have ready to go at some point while we're away from home that we want to do some painting? The tools that go with that, the carpentry tools that go with that. They all went ashore. Now they all have to come back. And it's like, so crew's been asking you, what do you want on board? And they go like a little bit of a blank face if you explain to them.
Yeah, it's mostly just me schlepping things out.
And then so we got an audience over here. So anyway, asking a question. So yeah, so it's been a busy week getting into the details. The cook, of course, went out to get a bunch of extra food for the duration we're going to be away. So there's a lot of loading. So that's what we've been doing and continue to do.
And we've been successful as we are now making our first short trip down to Annapolis.
Yeah. So I'd like to bring in our guest to talk about a partnership that is new to us at Pride Inc. But with a project that's been ongoing for a while, right, Kate?
Yeah. So hi, everyone. I'm Kate Marks-Hardy. I'm with the Star-Spangled Banner National Historic Trail and essentially the National Park Service. I'm actually wearing my little Park Service arrowhead. I realized I joined you all on Tuesday and I was in uniform, but I don't think anyone could tell I was in uniform. So I wasn't going to do that on my day off. I decided to just wear my jacket. But so we are partnering with Pride of Baltimore to help be our sailing ambassador throughout the Chesapeake. So this trail, when you hear the word trail, you think path through the woods, and that's not what this is, just to confuse things. But it follows the British and American troop movements during the War of 1812. And of course, that eventually led to the writing of our national anthem. So because the British primarily traveled via the water, the bay is part of that trail. So it seems perfect to have Pride as a reproduction War of 1812 schooner to be sailing along the water portion of the trail and helping us to go to some of the port cities throughout the bay. Yeah.
The concept of the Heritage Trail, how unique is that within the overarching efforts of National Park Service? Is this exclusive, or is this just a great story that's also in its own way being told, other stories being told elsewhere?
So, well, let me first say that there are 19 historic trails across the country. We're not the only one here, and we're actually not the only one in the Chesapeake Bay. There's two others, Captain John Smith Chesapeake and Washington Rochambeau Revolutionary Route. So, but we're one of 19, and the whole point of a National Historic Trail is to tell the story of a nationally significant route of human movement. So you may have heard of the Lewis and Clark Trail. That's a pretty well-known one. Selma to Montgomery is another very well-known trail. So, you know, the story behind our national anthem, and you know, the only time DC has been captured by a foreign entity is also part of that story. So that's kind of the national significance is this troop movement that led to these two major events in our history. So what's great is that it is tied to Fort McHenry. That's kind of the culmination of the story, right? And so we are administered out of Fort McHenry. That is where my office is. But the story of Fort McHenry didn't just, it's not just there. It's not a silo. There's so many events, amazing stories and stories of people that led to that moment. And that's what the trail helps tell.
Yeah, so, you know, there's a lot of terrorizing going on by the Royal Navy and the Marines in the Bay, in the Lower Bay. They were also anchored in the Lower Bay earlier on in the war to try to contain the privateers, as well as to stop commerce going across to international countries and back in again. So offhand, how many sites are there? Where are, generally speaking, both sides of the bay, right?
Right. Yeah. I don't know. It's a good question. I should know as a trail manager. There are hundreds, but how many are like officially designated trail sites? Around 120. There's some amazing sites throughout the bay that have a really cool story, but they're privately owned. So we don't consider them, we don't put them on the trail because we don't want people going to these private houses and such. But about 120 sites, and they're made up of parks and historic houses and even just towns, you know, historic towns. Like it's funny because you can see Annapolis or Havre de Grace as one point, or you can see it as multiple points because it has multiple connections to the story. There's multiple sites within that historic area.
Yeah, and so as Pride is being partnered up with this trail, she has a limit as to how many of these locations she can actually get to based on her size or depth. And so our points of visit are going to be these epicenter opportunities for elements that participate in the trail to gather and use Pride's presence as close as she can get to them as a way of promoting their own activities. So we're talking about later on this year, St. Mary's, Solomon, Cambridge, St. Michael's, Havre de Grace, Georgetown, Maryland, and Chestertown. So as the partnership is moving along, organizing the visit of the ship to those locations, and of course there's also Baltimore, got heritage activities in the area. There's a lot of coordination that you have to do to get those players within the Heritage Trail to just get set up for Pride getting into their general vicinity.
Right. So we've already started those calls. We started the initial calls, and with a couple of key players, and then we're just gonna be growing. You know, it's like, okay, so now let's bring this person in. Let's bring this person in. But we have had, multiple calls, both, and I shouldn't just say it's me. You know, Jeff Buchheit, the executive director of Pride Inc., has been also working hard with, as well as Erica and Patrick and you guys when possible. So yeah, that's it's happening, and the idea is that when you guys go into town, would be able to offer some free day sales to underserved communities and who haven't had this opportunity. And we'll have a NPS ranger in a flat hat helping to do the program. So it'll be kind of a great thing of having, you know, an NPS ranger on the Pride as you guys sail the area. So and the other thing is we would like to loop in those local trail partner sites to see how they can participate and tell their piece of local history, and they're tied to this nationally significant story. So so that the people who are coming here can see how their community is part of it as well.
So as a site, a physical entity at a physical location, Pride will be bringing frames that can be set up ashore that will hold displays. But aren't we also going to be doing like what we're doing now, having a virtual element to each of these visits elsewhere around the bay?
Yes, for sure. Especially with the way things are, we have no choice but to do this, right? So, right, Annapolis, unfortunately, we will not be able to offer the day sales. So we're going to be doing the virtual component. This coffee with the captain is part of that. There's going to be just for this particular visit in Annapolis, there'll be a 2 p.m. program about women in the Chesapeake. We'll be doing an 11 a.m. tomorrow virtual program about Black privateers during the War of 1812. And then at 3 p.m., Pride's going to be offering a virtual tour of the ship. So, you know, unfortunately, until things get a little better in terms of vaccinations and COVID and such, we're going to be doing the virtual programs as well.
Yeah, so folks can come look at the ship from a distance, can talk to the crew from a distance, can see the displays ashore and manage their own distancing, looking at the displays ashore. So with a little bit of Annapolis focus, the British fleet didn't come up into the Northern Bay right away. They did come up later, and in 1813, it's my understanding, they did a lot of activities in the northern part of the bay, and they actually encamped on Kent Island for a while, put up a great big flag, and was threatening Annapolis. They actually never went into Annapolis.
Correct.
But they did go into Havre de Grace, right?
Mm-hmm. They sure did. May 3rd, 1813. They sure did. And they attacked the city. I think they said 3/4 of the buildings were burned. Yeah, they did some damage in Havre de Grace.
Yeah, so a lot of, and the terrorism was spread all around the bay, down in the lower eastern shore. I'm not conversant with the details. Is there anything that you have at the tip of your mind that you can sort of identify with some of their activities in the lower eastern shore?
Well, I mean, I'll first say is that the reason why they were doing all of this is because they were trying to draw the American during the War of 1812. The initial actions are taking place along the British, along the Canadian and the U.S. border. So, you know, and at this time you got to remember, U.S. is at war with Great Britain is at war with France and Napoleon. So they did not want this war, and so they, in a way, are trying to. One, they see that the Americans are going into Canada and think they might be going after some land in Canada. And so they're trying to draw the troops down their attention. So they're going to raid the Chesapeake, trying to draw some of those troops down. It's also right where the nation's capital is, right? So if they can put pressure by raiding the area and kind of causing outrage among the locals near the nation's capital, maybe they can get this war to end as well. And then lastly, of course, the Bay, as we all know, has a lot of amazing resources, especially if you're going to bring an Army and a Navy here and you need to feed them and you need to make repairs to your ships and such. So, I mean, the region was a perfect place for that sort of thing as well. So they were conducting these raids. They would, in most cases, try not to fire. They would actually try to purchase at a very discounted rate things, but you know, if they were fired upon, then they were going to come into the towns and teach a lesson. So I mean, St. Michael's was hit twice, or I should say it was fired upon twice in August of 1813. One of the lower eastern shore instances actually took place in 1815, right? So right after what we would consider War of 1812, because by the way, it didn't end until 1815. It was the Battle of Ice Mound right there off of Taylor's Island in Dorchester County. So that was that's a kind of a neat little story where a British vessel was caught in the ice floe, and then the Americans attacked it and were succeeded in winning that 2-hour exchange, skirmish, if you will. So yeah, there's so many places along the bay were impacted by this war in different ways.
Yeah, and so when it comes to the privateers coming out of Baltimore, they had more or less left the bay by 1813. The British Navy didn't come up right away, but they were at the mouth, and so there was a lot of sneaking away. For instance, the chasseur, I understand, once she got out of the bay, all of her most of her port visits back in the States was out of New York. It was easier to get through the British blockade out of New York than it was trying to get in and out of the Chesapeake Bay. So, and Chasseur didn't eventually come back to her home port until 1815. So the British more or less controlled the bay towards the latter part of the war, it seems. As they were terrorizing, and then eventually vacated the bay somewhat rapidly after the defense of Baltimore, the attack on Baltimore, because they had a date with destiny down in New Orleans, right?
Right, that's right.
So, well, what else have I not asked that ought to be brought up for everybody?
I think you've asked what we need. I think people want to know is why we're doing this and what's the connection between our two organizations. I think if anything, I would just say to be sure to be following Pride or the Trail, or check our websites for all the updates. We're gonna, as soon as we start confirming these dates, we're gonna get them up. Hopefully we at some point will be able to do some sales. That's one thing we're really looking forward to.
Yeah, so when we get the safety situation in a manageable way, we will be looking forward to having deck tours, looking forward to doing day sales, as you've already mentioned. So yeah, that'll be cool. All right, cool. All right, Kate, well, thank you for joining us. It's a great honor to have you with us.
Yes. Thank you so much for having me. I mean, especially, I feel so special. You guys are actually underway for the first time in over a year, and I get to join you for that. So thank you so much.
Indeed. Yes, indeed. All right. Thank you, Kate.
All right. Thanks, guys.
Okay.
Bye. Yeah, just want to thank you, everybody, for watching, and tune in next week. Also, tune in this weekend for all of the virtual content. And I'm going to show you guys the view that you've probably been waiting to see, which is us under sail here.
Yay. Wow.
Sorry, my face is in the way. Let me move my face. First time using a camera.
Cool. All right, folks.
See you all next week.
Bye, guys.
And stay diligent.